Hi, everybody. Welcome to the live stream. My name is Nadia. I am a UK Global Talent Visa recipient and coach, and I'm very happy to see you join this live stream or watch this recording. If you're watching this as a recording, this reminds me, if you're not watching this on YouTube, I do encourage you and really ask you to subscribe to my YouTube channel. You can see it on your screen. It's at Hope. This is how you can find me pretty much anywhere. It is important for me. It shows support. It helps the channel grow, but also it does show that this information is necessary to others, and it's the easiest way to stay in touch with me. So if you're watching this on LinkedIn or on Facebook, to make sure to subscribe, to watch as many videos as you can, as you wish, like them, and tell your friends. So if you are new to this, the intro is basically that I got this visa last year as a software engineer, and since then I've been helping others and other IT professionals to get endorsed to increase their chances. So if you're interested in getting this visa in the future, there are a couple of ways this can work. You can apply on your own, and you can use the information on my channel, on my website, to prepare the documents on your own. If you want to work with me, you can get in touch with me, and the information how to do this is in the description on YouTube and on LinkedIn as well. You can DM me on LinkedIn. I think this is the most popular way for people to get in touch with me. So I'll be happy to help. And I guess the elephant in the room is that it's April the 1st, and TechNation officially shut down yesterday. And TechNation is the endorsement body, was the endorsement body for this visa for tech professionals. So weirdly enough, the organization is no more, but it's still accepting and processing applications. How this works, it's not entirely clear to me because they did cease operations, but they're still assessing applications. It's bizarre. I know it makes little sense, but that's the way it is. So the bottom line is that if you're thinking about applying for the visa and not sure what to do with the technician situation, I do encourage you to apply as soon as possible still, if this is something that you're interested in. And if you have questions, you can ask them during this live stream in comments. I'll be happy to answer them. Okay, that was a longer intro that I'm used to. So I'm really happy and excited to bring today's guest on. Just give me a second. Welcome, Vanya. Hello.
Hi everyone.
Thanks so much for joining. I do want to start with some introductions about you. And as you saw from the poster, Ivan was actually my premium coaching client who got recently endorsed with the visa as a software engineer, which is super exciting. So let's start with some intros. Maybe you can tell us a little bit about where you're from, what you do for a living. I mentioned that you got endorsed as a software engineer, but people are always asking for details, where exactly you worked, what you did, kind of front and back end, what was your what is your specialty in this. So all of this is helpful, and also how you learned about the UK Global Talent Visa and how did you decide to try applying for it.
Okay, sure. So I have been working as a software engineer for more than 10 years already, and most of this time I've been working as a front-end engineer, and the company I'm working at now is called Product Science. It's an innovative startup from Silicon Valley, and we are developing a tool which is helping people to improve performance of their mobile apps. I've been working there for more than a year already, and before that I worked at companies like TopTal and Rike. For those of you who doesn't know those companies, TopTal is a big solution for hiring talents on demand, meaning some freelancers, engineers, product managers, and stuff like this. And Rike is a big project management platform, and I've been working there as a front-end team lead for several years. So how I got to know about this talent visa. At some point in my life, I was looking for a way to immigrate at some country, and firstly, I was thinking about Canada and Express Entry program. But then at some point I visited London and loved this place, and I was looking for ways to immigrate there. several years ago, I kind of realized that there is this global talent visa. That time it was even called Tier 1 visa, and I read some articles how people receiving this visa, but it looked like I had to do more public things like publications, some public talks and stuff to receive this visa. At the same time, as I was pretty busy with my work, and it was hard to, do in parallel some public activities. So I was thinking about it in the background. Year ago, I joined this product science startup, and the idea was that some people from this company are living in the United States and they are relocating there using H-1B work visa or one talent visa there. They also suggested me to think about this O1 visa as well. But this type of visa is more kind of like requirements are more tough there, and you definitely has to have a strong track record of public activities there. And also the part of our company were relocating to the United Kingdom, and several people started to work on this global talent visa. Yeah, so should I tell about my first experience with a lawyer?
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, spoiler in the story. Yeah, so I was just about to ask. So you learned about the visa and you started preparing to apply for it. So what was your, as you hinted, you kind of had a first attempt at this. So maybe you could tell us a little bit more about what was it like, and since it didn't work out, any lessons that you learned from that experience trying to apply. It was last year in spring, right? Somewhere, summer, somewhere around that. Yeah.
Yeah. Last spring, our company hired a lawyer, and we started to kind of assemble docs for this application to this visa. Yeah, it was pretty stressful time, as you may guess, and my main mistake was that I did not research enough about this visa, and I relied on the lawyer too much. But at the same time, lawyer was more focused on making things correct from a legal perspective, but lawyer wasn't thinking about requirements of taxation guide regarding proving documents. So as a result, we assembled my application as we could, but basically my first attempt looked like applying with a CV, because besides CV, we submitted only my previous contracts showing that, okay, I have a pretty good salary at previous companies and the current one. And also inside CV, we provided some links to my publications and public speakings. I did not have much of them. Basically, it was like one or two public speakings and a couple of publications and stuff like this. So just as links, my portfolio did not look outstanding. And with that, obviously, taxation declined my application as they did not find it, very great. They just checked those links, said, well, so what? Those is not enough. We don't understand why you are applying as a global talent, and your salary is not that good. Probably they were comparing it with salary in the United Kingdom, which is definitely not that good if I compare it with this country. The insight we can take from it is that if you're working with a lawyer, keep in mind that lawyers, as lawyers, obviously, right? They are focusing on legal things, and they will not think much about kind of marketing of your story. They do not push you much to encourage you much to think about how to present your story in the most great way. Like you yourself have to read the guide. You have to understand which points in your career you should show, in which way should you show them, and also they again regarding documents, they don't care like how good are those documents. They care like they are formally okay, yes, then let's go. But you have to think about documents as you know, it's a most important piece of your application, right? You have to really think how to present all your points in the best way, and you have to support every single point with independent document. Don't go with the same way I went the first time. Just links is not enough. You cannot just provide them links to public speaking and say, hey, let's go and check it yourself. You have to provide it with a whole document describing what and why it's great, and the best way even to support it with a short cover letter when some expert is also saying few words that yes, that publication was great, and you showed that you're great talent and so on. So think about your application and market yourself if you're working with a lawyer, or don't work with a lawyer.
Yeah, I think I've had different experiences with lawyers being told on this channel. So I've heard good experiences as well. So I do think that it depends on the lawyer, and some lawyers really take this stuff personal. I mean, not personally, but really like they do it in a very detailed way. I think you should really try to find a lawyer if you're working with a lawyer or a specialist, somebody who specializes in this visa and who has expertise on this, and you can sort of test them as well, like asking them questions. So if you watch this channel, if you do your own research, I think you can ask them good questions. I think that if, for instance, you did your own research before, right, then you would probably raise questions about your application and the documents that they prepared. So you wouldn't be in this position. So I think a lot depends on you doing your research or just go in with specialists that other people have trusted and who have good results. And that's basically it, because I also don't think that you should, like, everybody should be expected to do all this research, after all, you hire a person to do this for you sort of, but that's the reality of it. You need to understand like what you're doing, as with everything I think in life. So yeah, really sorry to hear about your experience. I imagine it was quite stressful, especially last year, and kind of the uncertainty that you went through. So what was your next step after you got rejected? What did you do next?
Yeah, got a bit of depression after that, as I thought that okay, I don't have enough, points to go with this visa. I was thinking about it for a while. Then I found a Telegram channel about this global talent visa. And there I found some other stories from people who also had some quite not successful story with lawyers, and even people with a much more grateful experience. Like there was a guy who worked in self-driving delivery bot, I mean physical robot, and that's a great scientific and practical research. And with that, in his experience, he also was declined because his application was not, it was not great. We're not showing this experience. So I started to think that maybe I should try to, go deeper into details about this guide. I started to, based on experience from other people, I started to understand that I should provide my application in a different way. I should support all the points with independent docs. I should provide more letters and stuff like this. So I got the basic idea of that probably I should go with another try. And if this time is not going to work, then okay, then it's definitely not my way. And doing this research, I found your YouTube channel and your interview with Ginny from Facebook, and I was impressed that you knew all the details about this guide and visa, and you showed that you had experience with previous application. You knew some subtle details like what should be in the application, what should not, because when you're talking to a lawyer, they sometimes can ask you some weird things. Like, for example, in my experience, my lawyer asked me that I have to create email with my name in it. It's important. So I usually use like a nickname and my main email with a nickname, but she said that no, you should have name and surname in your email. And also with GitHub account, you should rename a GitHub account into having name and surname. And you, like, if you have not researched enough, you have doubts like, what is it really important or not, and some other details like this. But when you see a person who is talking based on real experience, real applications, as you can tell, like, okay, we tried this and that, and it worked. That did not work. You've seen many, declines from a chat, and you've seen also updates of the video. So definitely your YouTube channel was showing that you are aware of this visa, you know a lot about this. And also like knowing myself, I can tell that it's hard for me to go with something if you have some kind of uncertainty. So I kind of had an idea of how can I improve my documents, but I wasn't sure 100%, right? So let's say, okay, I will go with this doc. Is it like a good solution? Is it the best way in my situation to go with this particular docs? Then going with every of docs, like how is it? You're writing a doc, and if you're working on your own, you don't like there is no way for you to receive valuable feedback and feedback which you will respect and believe, right? So if just one person will give you feedback, then okay, it's better than nothing. But receiving feedback from an expert, which I've seen many of those applications, I've seen declines and approvals, that's much more useful. So to keep me focused and to receive feedback and to get professional help, I decided to ask your help. That's how our story started.
Oh, thank you so much. It was very, very nice to hear this feedback. And I'm really glad that you reached out to me because I immediately saw that you have a good case and that it should be handled in a different way and that you would have good chances to get endorsed. So a couple of things you said caught my attention. I think that the point that you made about making your own research is important. Then not really being discouraged if you get rejected. It's very common. The statistics that TechNation shared before was that 52%, 50 something percent of people get rejected initially. So it's quite common to get rejected. So if you get rejected, don't discourage. Also, make sure that you're, if you're gathering information online, just treat it carefully. If you see people, you will sometimes see people getting rejected who have experience that is much more impressive than you, and then you would see somebody get endorsed and you would think that how come they got endorsed, like their experience is nothing compared to mine. But remember that you never see their documents, right? Usually you don't see their documents. For instance, like I get people, reach out to me, they got rejected and they show me their documents, so I see them. But if you're just following forums, you don't see the actual documents, and this is where the decisions are made and the cases either made or it fails, right? The documents itself. So if you're seeing those examples, just be careful with what you kind of how you treat this, and whether you get discouraged by it or encouraged, it's totally up to you. And another thing, as you said, like forums or Telegram chats and volunteers, I think this is a great research resource for you. So I've shared on my website, you can find a tab for do it yourself, so like resources, free resources that you can use to prepare. But be careful with forums and volunteers as well. Like you should understand that these are volunteers, right? So first of all, they don't owe you any kind of professional help. You will likely get good information from certain sources, and the good ones are on my website, so you can check them out. uh, but also, as you said, you're not paying them to help you, so you shouldn't, like, first of all, you can't have any expectations of them in terms of like time and when they will respond, but also the level of professionalism that you will get for them. It's different. So it's different. It's a different thing. You should not expect the same kind of service from paid service and from just people helping each other and volunteering. Although I do think that chats and forums can be a good source of information, but just be aware that it's good to gather data, but it's not the best place to ask somebody to evaluate your case. I think this is the most, I think, crucial thing, is that people would go on the forum. Maybe you have seen this. Like they would go on the forum and they'd be like, okay, I work at company X, Y, and Z. I have a publication and I gave a talk. Like, what are my chances? And I always discourage people from doing that because it doesn't really show you anything. Like it takes time to understand what the chances are really for somebody, right? So when you reached out to me, maybe you can talk through like what we did, how we kind of went from you getting rejected to you getting endorsed, kind of the steps that we went through. I will share my website on the screen so that people can check out the services that I offer, so that they can check out like what stuff you're mentioning and the packages that we got, because you got several packages because your case was a little bit more complex, right? Because you had a case that was prepared already and you've done your own research, but you got rejected. And then what did we do to overturn this decision? What steps did we take?
Yeah, first of all, one small notice to support my previous words. You mentioned statistic about how many global applicants receiving the endorsements, and I just wanted to say that look, it's not easy to find these statistics. To find it, you should follow the news, you should follow channels, you should follow forums. And you see, Nadia is aware about it. And watching her videos, I also noticed that she has so many detailed pieces of information showing that she is following very carefully all the updates and news, and using several sources of information. And this is outstanding work because right now I understand that during the process I also was trying to follow like channels and stuff, but it's very hard. Like many people are writing there, you have to evaluate everything, double check stuff, filter things, and even this is a lot of work. But besides that, you should also work with your clients. So that's
Yeah, yeah.
huge. That's
Thanks. Yeah, I do keep in touch. I do try to follow the Telegram chat. So I'm in like 3 or 4 Telegram chats at the moment, and they're all Russian speaking chats, which is again, now that I think about it, it's also kind of an advantage because I have a lot of clients who are not Russian speakers, right? And they don't really have access to those kind of channels. And it feels that those channels are just the gold mine of information, honestly. And this is how I keep track of like what people are rejected for, what people are applying with, what the news is, and it helps me to see what people are doing, what works, what doesn't. So yeah, and this is something that I do kind of day to day all the time. And with my clients, especially my premium coaching clients, I do encourage people not to follow chats if it causes them anxiety, if they don't have time. Usually people still don't follow my advice and they still follow chats, especially if there is something really stressful going on, like the closing down of Tech Nation. So I, really told all my clients, like, don't follow chats, just focus on your application. Don't worry, I will tell you if something changed. So I think that this is another little benefit of working with somebody. You can expect that they will tell you if something changed. At least I think that this should be the professional level. If you're hiring somebody, especially as a premium service, you should expect them to tell you if the rule changed, if the organization goes down or something like this, right? So thanks for bringing this up as well. So hopefully this is helpful for people.
So regarding our experience, our first communication was in the middle of January. I pinged you and asked to help with my case. Then we scheduled a call, a review call, a call where we went through my previous applications, through the response from technician, and also through my ideas of how I can improve my next application. And even that call was already super useful because I could validate the facts that okay, those were mistakes with my previous application, meaning that it's not that my achievements are not that good. It should be a way to present them in a better way. I also validated my ideas on how to present them in the next step. And yeah, those evaluations were, very important for me. So after that, we get a discussion that how we can organize our next steps and works, because you were already quite busy with premium clients, and at the same time, I knew that I would like to have, you know, continuous synchronization with you, like for every dog, for every period of time, to be able to synchronize with you and ask for feedback, and like both to motivate myself to work on a schedule and focus on this work, and at the same time to receive feedback soon. And we negotiated it and decided that we go with coaching, having calls once a week. And we started from another big call, strategic session, discussing in more details, like what exactly documents we are going to prepare, how we are going to, what will be the story of my case, how will we describe my achievements, how will we advertise myself. And this is a crucial detail, actually. If you're preparing your case on your own, think about it, like, what is your story? It should be some kind of idea. Imagine it's a kind of long cover letter, because actually you have a cover letter in your application. It's 1,000 words statement, personal statement, like why you think that you are fitable for this global talent visa. And this is kind of backbone of your application. You should then describe in more details every single point you're mentioning there, or idea of you are providing there. Yeah, telling story of yourself, why you are the great talent. And so yeah, we agreed to go with calls once a week, but then in the end of January, Tech Nation announced that they're going to shut down their business, and then everything changed.
Yeah, it like we were both laughing like nervously, but it's not fun laughter, just nervous because I think it takes me back to that day. I think it was Wednesday. Yeah, it was Wednesday when this news dropped. And it was pretty shocking, I think, to everybody who was preparing for the application. And as you said, we were planning to take it kind of slowly and take two and a half months to prepare, because this was like my normal timeline before. It was like 8 to 10 weeks, plus or minus. It was like a normal pace, I think, for preparing for the visa, where you work on 2 documents a week and you have a call once a week. You do those regular things, and this is what we were planning to do initially. And then, as you said, there was the news of Technation closing down. So Technation was to close down on the 31st of March. And at that point, nobody knew. And just for context, like for future watchers of this, like nobody knew what would happen. And there was a lot of speculation, a lot of gossip on chats, a lot of panic. And people were trying to predict what will happen, right? So there were different versions. People said that maybe they will since if they're closing down on March 31st, which was yesterday. Actually, it's quite funny that we're recording on the 1st of April. I wasn't planning this way. I mean, I'm just realizing how ironic this is. But yeah, people thought that if they're closing down on March 31st and it takes up to 8 weeks to process an application, so they should stop accepting applications like 8 weeks prior, which was, I think it was like, it gave people like, I don't know, 3 days or like 1 day to apply or whatever. So it was something crazy like that. And I think it made sense that the applications would stop at some point, but we didn't know when this would happen, right? So I had discussions with all of my clients who were kind of in the pipeline at that point, and we discussed it and we planned like what will happen if they stop accepting applications, so that people understood the risks. And okay, my earbud just fell out. Yeah, it was quite a stressful period. But basically, we discussed this with all my clients. We understood that they might not have enough time to finish the application, but we decided, like all of my clients luckily decided, that we should just go ahead with the applications, do our best, and apply as soon as humanly possible, just to maximize our chances of getting in, right? So we had this discussion with you as well. We both agreed that we should go ahead and try to do it, and this is when the coaching really changed and it got pretty intense in terms of speed. So maybe you can tell the viewers a little bit about the process, because I think this would be helpful for anybody who is not maybe working with me, or working their own, or working with somebody else. How to how in terms of like applying quickly, right? Because a lot of people right now maybe will decide to apply very quick. So how did it look like for you in terms of working on this case as a premium coaching client, and what was it like? What was the speed like? What was the intensity like, um, as somebody who went through this experience?
Yeah, long story short, it was kind of just unbelievable experience, because you had several clients like me, right? To whom you support their applications. Besides that, you had another job, right? and we decided to go quickly, meaning that I was working on my docs approximately like 45 hours per week, like one another job in parallel to my main one. But you were doing similar things. You were working on your main job and also were doing help for all your clients, and you were doing it uh, like I don't know how, because definitely it's not my level of energy. I would not survive it. But if I do something, if I have a result, I submitting it to you, pretty much instantly you're answering me. Like at the end of the day, I already have feedback of my document. I can go forward and fix based on concerns. If I have like short questions, you are answering instantly. If I need a review of my document, you are answering during the day, 24 hours, which, as I said, unbelievable, because to prepare documents at that level, we did an expert which is helping you have to immerse in the story. Expert has to kind of keep in mind all the pieces of your experience, like where you worked before, who was these people, experts which are supporting your case, what are the important points, what were your achievements, like you developed some particular features, some things, and to present story in a great way, you have to be precise about details. And okay, for you it's kind of natural to remember your own story, right? But for an expert who is also working with several other people, to remember all those details and to help you correct your own story, that's incredible level. I don't know, like it's just beyond my abilities of of work, because that was so much work and so much stress. It's hard to imagine. And just think about it. We in the end of January, 31st January, TechNation announced that they're shutting down. Then we started to work in a running way, like speedy way. Was not only me, but all your clients, right? And 12th of February, which is kind of shorter than 2 weeks. And 12th of February, I already applied for stage 1, because we also thought that, okay, maybe at some point they closed to accept those applications. But if you applied for stage 1, if you paid already for the stage 1, then they cannot, you kind of already started the process. They cannot stop you on this stage, right? And after submitting the stage 1, you have 15 working days to submit your actual application of technician. And we decided, to put the leg in this closing door to create it. And even though the whole application was not ready at that point, but at that point we were pretty sure about schedule. We were pretty sure that we will submit it in time. And we already had kind of half of the things, half of the documents and things in just 2 weeks. Just for the context, I had so maximum of the documents is 10 documents and 3 letters, right? So I had all of them. I had 10 documents and 3 letters, and also I have short cover letters from experts for almost every document in this list. So I had 8, if I'm not mistaken, 8 letters in total.
Yeah, I think in
That's
total we had 11. Yeah, it was 8 supporting and 3 main. I think so. I think something
yes,
like this.
yes, 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 eight
11,
additional
11 letters. Oh my God.
11 letters. Yeah, that's a lot. I was also communicating with my experts, and thanks God they are great people and they were responding very quickly and helping me. But anyway, that was outstanding work. And then just in the end of February, in 2 more weeks, we finally submitted the application. It means that months, just in a month we applied. If for anybody who tried to do it, they can understand how hard it is to prepare all your docs in a month. That was outstanding work, and I prepared only my docs in a month, but Nadia prepared how many, I don't know. And how many also besides your constant clients with whom you're communicating like every day. There were clients who were asking for strategic calls for review sessions and stuff. Of course, there were more of them than usual, like because people also decided to go quickly and jump into this last cabin of the train, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah, it was
that
it was quite
yeah.
it was quite intense. You're right. Like there were a lot more clients than usual because people were trying to apply as early as possible, not really sure what will happen. As you said, a lot of people were getting individual sessions, kind of more low budget versions of it. And I shared the link in the chat. So this is the page where you can basically look at all the packages. So probably I think the strategy session was the strategy package, as I renamed it later, was the most popular one, where you can just basically, if you are on a budget and you just want to apply quickly but prepare documents on your own, but you want to get started in a way that is structured, then I think this is a good package. And then the review is where you already have the documents and you want somebody to read through them before you apply, which is also a useful package to get. So yeah, it was intense. February, I don't remember that month. It was a lot, but also I think it was a good energy and kind of good, in a way it was good times because a lot of great people were trying to submit applications very urgently, and it felt like everybody was very energetic, working really hard on their documents, so things were moving very fast, which I really enjoyed. Because for me, like, I like to do those things quickly, right? If I have a client, especially a premium client, like, I want to get started and get finished as soon as possible, submit the application and have them get their visa, and then I can move on. Like, for me, it's not interesting or fun to drag out the case for 6 months. And this is not how individual coaching works. So I think this is one thing to keep in mind if you're thinking, like, whether you work on your own, with a big company, with an individual coach. I think that if time is your constraint, then you should probably either do it on your own and doing a lot of research, or working with somebody who is an individual coach. And like, I know, for instance, another coach in the space, and like with them, it's also a priority to get started quickly. And like, we don't have like a backlog of people who are all kind of in the pipeline, but nothing is happening. So that's not how it works. It's just like a little internal information about the industry, I think, for people who are not familiar. So just keep this in mind and be aware of time pressure and how urgent the thing is for you.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah. So did we discussed the format, right? Is there anything that you would like to add to the format that we worked through before we start discussing the actual documents and the criteria, or have we covered everything?
You mean format of work?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Well, we were using Google Docs and comments. We were using Trello board with tasks to also be focused and be specific about things we're doing, which is also, yeah, kind of useful things. And similar to standards of work in our industry, we also have tasks every day, right? So we were applying same tools and same practices as we usually apply at our work. One more insight we got that English is not my native language, obviously. So at first we started with me writing docs in English, but then we realized that it works better if I write, self-written docs in Russian first, and then translate it to English. It worked better because first, writing in your native language, you can focus about facts. You can focus about what exactly you want to say, and you must probably go better in this in your native language because you kind of more rich in thinking of your native language, and then translation more like a technical thing. Then having one text, you can translate it into another language. You can do it yourself. You can ask for help other people. Even though it's at first can look like it's taking more time to write it this way, it's not really true because if you write in English at first place and your English is not, proficiency level, then most probably you will have several edits, which is also taking time. You submit it to reviewer, they raise concerns, you are trying to, improve statements, improve ideas in English, which is also taking time. At the end, I now think that even translation approach is even quicker than writing directly in English. At least for me, with my level on English. Even though I've been working in international company for quite a while, probably more than 3 years already so far, and I feel pretty confident in day-to-day communications. I can write business letters, tasks, and stuff. I can understand other people and stuff, but still, it's not enough for this level of documents.
Yeah. I think this is a very useful insight, and this is something that I discovered myself. I kind of knew it before because I have my experience working as an editor, but also I didn't quite realize how important this was. But in your case, I think I saw very clearly that um, that we had we had a strategy session where you explained things about your experience in Russian, which is our native language, and everything was super clear to me in terms of your achievements, like what was the innovation, what was the contribution. Everything was super clear. It sounded very convincing, and this is why I have like a strategy session before where if the candidate is able to convince me that this case has something in it, then I'm sure that we'll be able to translate it into the language that technician needs to hear. So this is why I like starting with a strategy, because it's like a deep level conversation about your experience. And usually it's not enough to just have like a 30-minute call with somebody to understand whether they can qualify or not, but like a 3-hour intense session is, I think, usually enough to do this. But yeah, when you did that, everything was super clear. But then when you started writing the documents about your experience, to me, I immediately saw that something was missing, that it wasn't clear what you were trying to say. And my suggestion was that maybe you can try to write this in Russian first, just like explaining the content. Then I would read through it, and if everything made sense, then you could just get it translated, because like translation is like a technical step towards the end. You have to have the content, right? And here I think people sometimes worry that, what if my language is not perfect, what if my English is not amazing? I think it's fine as long as there is content in it, right? If there is some meat in the application, then it's fine. Like, you don't have to hire a copy editor who would just make perfect documents. It's not necessary, but the documents have to make sense, and they have to have the things that technician wants them to have in them. Basically, that's, I think, the biggest kind of insight. So moving kind of back to the application itself, and what it included, the criteria, all the things that we like to talk about on this channel, so that people can just take this and use it in their own application. Especially, I think this will be especially relevant for software engineers, but I think all of this stuff is applicable to other fields as well. You just use the general idea of it and apply it to your own case. But more specifically, we had the mandatory, which everybody has, the leadership criteria. Then we chose the innovation one, and the third one, the contributions. So maybe we can talk about, maybe you can tell the audience about the documents that you used and the types of documents, like the exact documents that you used, so that people understand like how this can be proven. We can start with the innovation. So OC1, which is one where people get super confused. People who are employers, like software engineers at companies, they are confused about this criteria because the guide mentions salary, employment contracts, and things like that, which don't really prove innovation. And the guide is not very clear about what specifies as innovation. It mentions patents, and then people think, what if I don't have a patent? Like, can I not use this criteria? And you successfully use this criteria, and you met it with your experience as an employee. So maybe you could talk about the document that you used for the first optional criteria.
Yeah, sure. Actually, it was a very crucial part of our strategy, as I don't have much of public presence, and it would be hard for me to satisfy the second criteria about, some track record beyond your primary occupation. But at the same time, it looked like I can satisfy this innovation criteria. Why? Because first of all, right now I'm working at innovative company. We are definitely changing the market for performance analysis. We know for sure that company which are providing solutions for performance analysis right now, they are, significantly different. Basically, they are providing just post-production analysis of the problems, but we are providing some intellectual tool which analyzing performance of application before the production, so you can prevent problems. You can analyze your app before sending it to clients, which is significant. And also some ways we're using to show you insights about performance. They are new, like no other tools having it right now, even though they're not like rocket science. Like we are not creating anything impossible, but assembling a lot of things and rethinking them in terms of performance analysis. At the end, we are having a very special and a brand new approach of performance analysis. And those things are already in publications of our company. We had talks on DroidCons in New York and in London. And that was actually the idea of the first document. I was describing why the company I'm working right now is innovative, what we have on the market, what are we doing differently, why we believe it's changing the market and it's bringing new things. So I provided links to this public talks, screenshot from there, and also provided we had a publication in TechCrunch where our founders describing how things are going, about round of investments. Also they're mentioning revenue numbers, and those are proofs that look, those people are experts. They are sequential entrepreneurs. Some of people who are presenting us on those talks, they are also experts in industry, in performance analysis, and they're saying we are innovative. We are making money as an innovative company, and some news like TechCrunch are, making publications about us. That's proving that we are definitely an innovation company, and I'm working here and doing my impact. In other documents and in letters from experts, including experts from our company, I'm supporting this point that yes, I'm working, yes, I'm doing impact, my work is significant, I have my part in this innovation, but this is the first document. The second document in this innovation criteria is about my innovation inside this company. And you may think that innovation should be something you are going to have a Nobel Prize for, or something like a company. If you founded company like I'm working at right now, then it's innovation. But it can be, less famous thing, but still it's kind of creative approach innovation. So at some point at our company, I had to solve some algorithmic problem. I had to find, in precise, I have to find some algorithm to um, differentiate some particular parts in a graph, which I started investigation about that. I was working on it quite some time, and at first it looked like an p-hard problem, which is, as you understand, not easy to be solved in a appropriate time. And at some point, after several researches and tries, I found some way to avoid the complexion of this task and still solve it from the business perspective. At the end, I had a pretty intricate algorithm of analyzing the graph of connections inside the application. So even that time when I was developing it, my colleague said that, well, that's huge. That's a very intricate thing, and you have definitely go and have a talk on a conference about that. Probably someday I will, but it's very specific thing. It's applying some computer science and algorithms at particular problem, which probably will not be useful for the rest of engineers in industry. But still, it was innovative approach. Like if you just go and Google how to solve this particular problem, you will not find a straightforward answer. You will just find that, hey, it's an p-hard problem. You're not going to solve it in a polynomial time. That's it. And you have to find a way how to avoid this thing. Of course, I haven't found a solution for an p-hard problem, right? But that's exactly what I stated in the document. I stated that, hey, it was tough. I found a way how to avoid it, how to solve it. I even described the diagram of this algorithm, described example of what we have like on the input of this algorithm, on the output of this algorithm. And also I provided a short reference letter from my colleague, exactly this guy who said that it's a huge thing. And luckily he is a teacher of computer science for some years, so he is definitely an expert on these things. And also he recently got a global talent visa as well. So a proven expert from several sides, right? And he supported the idea that yes, this is innovation, this is tough thing. Ivan worked great on it. That's the second document, innovation. The third one,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Third one, also interesting example, because it's not even a technical thing. It's an innovation in processes of development. Working at Taptal and before at Reich, I was thinking about solving a problem of code quality, like how to measure code quality and how to motivate engineers to work on it and how to control it, how to measure. I got to the idea how to work on it. And my idea was to use just NPS, which is Net Promoter Score, for measuring code quality as feedback from engineers about their own code. I tried it at TopTal and it worked pretty well. It helped people to focus on things they really believe in, because usually how we work with code quality, we find some best practices, some ideas people think we have to implement. Let's say we have to have a big coverage of tests in our application, right? Let's start to measure coverage and let's have it big numbers in it, like 70%, 80%, 90%, something like this. Or we can use some code metrics like cyclomatic complexity or stuff like this. Let's control it and measure it. But what if people on your team don't believe in it, or they're not sure it works, or we are doing it, but people still feel that code base is not that good, it's not that comfortable to work with. Then even though you are satisfying those numbers, you are in the end having small results regarding motivation and support of the code base. So the idea was kind of easy. You should ask your experts, your engineers, their own opinion about code base and rely on that. So then you can control. If you're applying still the same best practices, but you have this feedback, you can see that if you're applying those best practices and see this NPS scoring going up, then you're doing well. Your engineers are motivated and satisfied with their code base, then we will have better results. If you're applying some practices and the score going down, then something is wrong, right? You have to pay attention. Probably they don't believe in things you're applying or something else. Pretty simple idea, but still, if you try to Google it, you are not going to find any things like that. It was an innovative approach. It was a creative way to solve this problem. So my document was first describing why it's an important problem in industry. I was mentioning some publications from Martin Fowler, for example, who is talking about code quality as an important thing to measure. I was describing that, yeah, that's a relevant problem. Then I started to describe how I suggest to solve it. Again, just simple idea, and still the proof is that you will not find this solution. And also I supported it with, again, a reference letter from my colleague from TopTal. He's an engineering manager there, and he was impressed. That time he really like we worked together to integrate this at TopTal, and it worked, and he knew about it, so he shared his feedback about that. And as also an expert in industry with public talks, with a great title at that company, with entrepreneur experience at the United Kingdom, then his words in support of my innovation was very valuable as well. So those three documents I provided as my track record of innovations.
Yeah, that's amazing. Thanks so much for reminding me of all of that. And I just, while you were talking, I just kept smiling because I just felt, I don't know, probably feel this way, like just proud of the way we really presented all of this stuff. And I think it kind of was like a perfect example of how to prove an innovation for an employee at a company, where you might, I think a lot of people dismiss their own experience and dismiss their own innovations because they feel like they have to have something truly groundbreaking and just something that changed the world. But I hope that this video finds its audience and convinces people that you can be really creative with what you use as innovation. So just to recap, you work at a company that is doing a product that is new. Again, it's not As you said, it's not rocket science, but it is something that is new in the industry. So maybe your product that you are building currently, maybe it's doing something like that in your industry. Then this was kind of like high level. Then lower level that you described your own particular technical innovation, which was the algorithm that you used. And again, like this wasn't you solving like centuries old computer science problem that nobody solved, but you coming up with a creative and new unique way to solve something that you first of all explained in your own words. You had some diagrams, and I remember we spent a lot of time on that document because I did feel that it was important to make a good case that this was an innovation, but also to make clear that it's a new thing, that it's something that an expert recognizes as a new thing, as an innovation. And you had a nice letter from somebody who was a computer science specialist, so it was quite neat to present in this way. And the last example about code in PS I also really liked, because it was, you are a software engineer, but this was more of a process problem and organizational problem that you solved in a new way, which again, I hope that this encourages somebody to think about this way, because I think we all as engineers, we have those kind of things that we do in our jobs that we maybe don't really remember as something special. But if you think about your career, maybe you can come up with something that was new for your organization. And if you can present it well, and if you can get an expert to say that this was a new thing, because you have to realize that technician, they don't really have, like, they rely on the expert to say that something is true. So if you find an expert who can say that the thing that you did was new and important for the industry, that's really all they need. Like it doesn't have to be anything more than that. So if you think about it, if you don't overcomplicate it too much, and I know it sounds really simple the way you just described it, as if we just like came up with those format and like everything was super easy. It wasn't easy. I think that this criteria was the hardest one to explain properly. But honestly, if you don't have much of a public profile, if you don't have conferences, if you don't have a huge blog, if you don't have whatever online, then as an engineer, and you don't have academic background and research papers, then you have to fulfill the innovation basically if you want to get this visa. And it's hard to meet it, but it's the criteria that you can try to meet if you don't have that kind of external stuff happening. So don't get discouraged if you don't have public talks or things like that, because maybe we can talk about this in more detail, because this is something that worries people a lot when they start thinking about this visa. They have heard maybe that you have to have conference talks and you have to have a certain number of articles, and then they're sometimes told to go there and like write a magic number of articles, publish it, get some views, and then apply, which as if this will help them if they don't have kind of a good case or something like this. So I think that you have to be really careful with this kind of stuff, how much time you spend on this, and like whether it's worth doing it. Recently, I guess I haven't really talked about this on this channel, but um, recently it has been very, like, there have been more rejections where the rejection mentions that you applied with very fresh evidences. So you have publications that are all super recent, or like public talks that are all within the last month or so, right? So this can actually this doesn't really do much to strengthen your case if you are only doing this last minute. Like if you have never had anything at all happening, and then like in a few weeks before you apply you have 10 articles and 5 talks, then like you can submit it obviously if you have it, but it might be not worth like putting off your application just to get this through. It's not that strong anymore. It doesn't work like that anymore, at least from the rejections that I've seen. I'm sure that some people got the visas with recent stuff, but in your case, for instance, like you didn't have that much of a public profile, right? Maybe you can give people an idea of like how much did you have in general before applying, so that they can be like, okay, do you have more or less than this person?
Kind of zero. Long story term. Yeah, my application is interesting from this point of view because, first of all, interesting examples that we have not submitted any documents about my salary. Zero documents about my salary because all the documents we submitted in the first try were about salary, and they explicitly mentioned it in the response that, hey, like salary is not a significant thing. It's not proving anything. Technicians said this. They are saying it in the guide also that salary is not that important. So it's not proving anything. At least except you are, I don't know, making millions. But then probably global talent visa is not that important for you. So. Zero documents about salary, and also public presence. It's interesting because basically we submitted nothing about publications, even though I had a few articles on Medium. Medium is not well respected because it's not reviewed and you can publish there anyway, anything. And also, my articles were not, popular. Just few claps and stuff like this. So it didn't make sense to submit them. So zero public articles. One conference talk was inside mandatory criteria, and that one was kind of recent talk. It was last year spring conference, but again, I described what is this conference about, why this conference is great, why like presenting me there is a recognition of my talent, and also I provided again a reference letter from a guy from committee of this conference, also supporting my words that yes, Ivan was a significant speaker for us. We invited him to give us a talk. It was, it was even not my personal talk. It was a board discussion. There were several experts on this call, and we were discussing front-end engineers hiring. I was sharing my experience, they were sharing their. So I was among several experts on this board discussion, and still we provided it as one of the evidence, describing why we think it's recognition. What else? Also, at some point, I had a stream in IT school. School basically, which is providing additional education for professionals, learning programming, design stuff. And I had an interview with Sam when I worked at Reich as an individual expert from Reich, like representative. And then they asked me to give them a stream again about hiring in software engineering, and I was describing how to advance in your career as a front-end engineer, what you should learn, what should you show, how to prepare for an interview, what you're asking on an interview, and stuff like this. And this talk got quite popular. It had 20,000 views. And the channel of this school is also quite popular, and that was another document I was describing that, hey, this is very popular school, they have a very popular YouTube channel, screenshots from a channel with views, this is my talk there, pretty popular talk, screenshot of this views on my talk, and also again reference letter from founder of the school, who actually asked me to give this talk. I asked him to provide several words why they asked me and how it went. So he said something like, yes, we asked Ivan because he's expert and his talk was valuable for us and stuff like this. And that was another document showing that I was recognized again as a talent by them, school and profession. Then what else? Hackathon. and other stuff. At some point, well, I'm curious about algorithms. Basically, I've been doing some courses, like practicing and solving algorithmic problems, and at some point, I was participating in a Facebook Hacker Cup. If you are in this area, you probably knows about this competition. This is a algorithmic competition. You have to solve some particular problems in restricted times. There are several stages there, several tours where you have to solve harder and harder problem and shorter time. I spent I did a big effort to prepare for this competition, participate in this competition. It's not that easy because first round is several days. So it's probably 4 days, if I'm not mistaken, or 3 days. And you have to solve several problems during these days, and it was days I was just sleeping and solving, and eating sometimes in the breaks. That's it. It was tough days of solving these problems, and I got some result. Which, if you mention this result as it is, I got a position 1,353, which, well, that's just some, long below the list position, right? But it's from 32,000 participants, which is changing the picture. It's top 5% of participants across the world. And that's exactly what we were saying in my documents, saying, hey, that was a tough hackathon. Why it's tough, why it's popular, why it's well known, with the screenshots again from some resources. Showed my certificates, see this position, but explaining that it's top 5%, and also with screenshots how many participants we had in this competition, and also a letter from an expert from Facebook proving that yes, this hackathon is well known, famous, tough, and Ivan's result is good, can prove it. That's also a doc. Another doc is about my open source contributions. Also an interesting doc because if you have well-known open source repositories and contribution, no problem with you. Okay, but I basically, I had some open source contributions, but my repositories they don't work, they don't look great, they don't have stars at all, they don't have usage. You may wonder why, but the problem was that it was actually contribution on a border of a timeline. I mean, it was almost 5 years ago, like 4.5. It was like end of available period. At that time, I worked at Reich, and we were using Dart as a language for front-end development. Nowadays, it's well known as a language for Flutter, for mobile development, but back in the days, the idea of Google was that, hey, it's a tool for front-end development, and we had Angular 2 written in Dart. Google was supporting this repository at that time, and our company believed in it, and we used it quite a lot. And my repositories was particular for this ecosystem, for Dart language and front-end side. Wow. The problem is, after some time, Google decided to shut this down. They stopped developing Angular 2 in Dart. They start to develop ecosystem for Dart as a front-end tool. They focused on Flutter precisely, and kind of abandoned the rest. But that was not obvious future at that time, and we were contributing in that. And also at Reich, I was a person who developed a couple of tools for this ecosystem, which were not yet present in the newborn ecosystem that time, and also at some point, as a huge company using this tool, we were experiencing some problems with builder of Dart, and I was a person who was sent to Google in Seattle to collaborate with the Google team and to work towards problems inside this builder. I was kind of representative. I was communicating with our engineers at Reich. I was providing and explaining this problem to Google, and we together were collaborating on fixing them inside this builder. And that was idea of showing my contribution in open source this way. So hey, back in the days it looked different. I was contributing as I could in the Dart ecosystem. I submitted this to publish this to repositories which are not popular now, but I can explain why. It's not my fault. And I was contributing to ecosystem, and I was working with Google engineers to help them. And I also provided a letter from one of those engineers, again supporting my words. Yes, we knew Ivan. He and his company really contributing to Dart. It was valuable and significant. Sorry, it's not popular right now, but back in the days he did a great help for us. That was a document about open source contribution, and we have a fifth document, right? Or no, four.
Yeah, I think we had a 4 for mandatory and 3 for each of the optional, which is a very standard and kind of balanced layout that it feels like it. It doesn't have to be this way, but this is what we use, and this is what most of my clients end up having. Sometimes mandatory has more documents, and the optional have less. But just try, if you're working on your application right now, try to not have a criteria that is fulfilled just by one document. Usually, it's not the best. It's not recommended, basically. But this is all golden. Like, you can just take any of those evidence pieces that you just described and just learn from them, because I think what's important to realize here is that we use the same documents that got you rejected, the same documents. Like, you were the same person and the same achievements, right? And we just presented them differently, and that was the difference between you getting rejected and you getting endorsed. So I think this is super important, because in the first attempt you had the same open source contributions, right? And they were specifically mentioned in your rejection that this stuff is not good enough, right? I think they said that, like, not enough stars or something like this. And, like,
Yes.
objectively, if you looked at those repositories, they were quite dead at that point, right? Not many stars, not many people use them. But once you explained this to me during our strategy, and I was like, but this is great, we can actually use it, but you have to explain why this is important the way you just did. And this is a great approach to all of your achievements. If your achievement is actually solid, if it was important for a reason, but for some reason it didn't quite end up doing whatever you planned to, so this is something that you can use. So this is something that people can use with projects that maybe now seem that they failed. People ask me, if I worked at a startup that was successful, but then it went bust or got acquired, or it doesn't exist right now, and people ask me, like, is it good enough? And I'm saying, yes, you have to show this in context of that time, what happened back then, why this was impressive, why this was relevant. If you can get an expert to talk about something, then it's great. Like, this stuff doesn't have to be super successful to be meaningful, because things change. And if you provide context, then you will be able to get endorsed. The same thing for your hacker. How was it called? The hackathon?
Hacker Cup, yeah.
Yeah.
Hacker.
So the Facebook hackathon, the first time you applied, you only submitted the certificate of completion, which honestly looked a bit strange, because it, like, I didn't understand like what it was. And in general, like if you're working on your application, just make sure that every document makes sense. So if you're looking at the document, if I'm looking at the document and my question is like, what am I looking at? What is it? Why is it here? Like what's happening? Where am I? Like it's not a good sign. And when I'm reviewing your documents, for instance, I'm uh, interested in understanding them, sort of like I'm paid to help with this. If I don't understand something, it's a bad sign because the person who will be reviewing it, they don't have this incentive. They will just ignore the stuff that they don't understand. This is very important. And this is where people, I think, like to cut corners and save time because with your application, right, we could have saved time and just submitted the links to your repositories, which have very few stars. But what's the point? They would just ignore it because they don't understand what it is. So this is what makes this application so difficult and so time consuming. And this is something that people don't understand, unfortunately. That it's not, I'm not sure like who kind of spread this idea that this visa is very easy to get, that you just have a few letters, a CV, some links to open source, and like a few articles on HackerNoon, and that's it. Like it's not that simple, but also it's the best UK
For some
visa.
people
Yeah.
it works, but those people are, like I know the guy who used to be a head of computer science department in a big Russian university. For them, this approach just providing resume, CV with links of his scientific publications, books, and his work works great. If you this level of guy with innovation in computer science publications there, and you're head of computer science department, then yeah, CV is enough.
Yeah. I think it depends like on your level. You're right, but also even for people who have amazing achievements, I would still try to make sure that all the documents is clear and everything is super clear. But I think for most applicants, for like mere mortals like we are, I think we should be thinking about it more creatively, and thinking of how do you actually explain the stuff that you have, why this is a good achievement. I think in your case, we really leverage the power of reference letters very much. So if you think about the letters for the application, there are three main letters of recommendation, which people are more or less familiar with. But then once we go into the territory of the 10 supporting evidences, which we just discussed, people get super confused. So the format that we used and a lot of people use is a document that is like a Google page document, just a Google document with 3 pages. And then we would have you explaining the project or the achievement in your own words, maybe on the first 2 pages. And then we would have a reference letter, a short letter for 1 page, from an expert that is focused on this particular thing, right? This is how we framed it. So, for instance, if this was a hackathon, it was a document about the hackathon, you explaining it, you paste in your screenshot of your completion of the hackathon, some other links. Sometimes people would put in like pictures of themselves in a hackathon or in like an email congratulating them, anything that you can get your hands on. And then the last page was a letter from an expert, from an engineer from Facebook, who was confirming that this was actually a big deal. And in your case, what you really did very cleverly is you used a lot of people who you reached out to a lot of people who have the global talent visa, the UK global talent visa, which is very smart. And this is something that I encourage people to do. If, of course, like if you know people like this, so you have to be in this position that you know such people. But if you do, it's really cool because this way it's very hard for technician to argue that this person is not an expert because they themselves recognize them as a global talent. So this would be a bit strange for them to argue with themselves. So if you can use those people, I think it's really good. So which you did in this case, and I think this really improved your application as well. But also, just don't take it the wrong way. It's not a requirement. It's just if you know such people, you can use them. If you don't, then you just need to explain why this person is an expert. We explained it as well. You have to explain it like every time you have the letter. It starts with this person explaining why they're an expert, what is their background. This is super important. And on my channel, you can find a couple of webinars that I did where I go into this stuff in more detail if you would like to learn. But basically, it has to be clear that this person is an expert, which is, I think, your experts are very strong in your application and really good backgrounds, people from product-based background. This is what technician likes. So people not working in consultancies, people with mostly experience in product companies, which is important. Then I think you had like strategic experts. For instance, if we were talking about an algorithm, I think it was really cool that we had an expert who had a background in computer science. So you can always leverage those things in your favor. So if you're trying to make a specific point in your application, you can find an expert who can make this point with some authority behind them. Because this is what technician needs. They need somebody with authority to tell them that this is true. Because then, even if you get rejected in some way for some reason, it will be very hard for them to argue that you don't have experts backing you, or like your innovation isn't really clear. We had a couple of questions which we'll get to a little bit later. There was one about innovation, which I think we can handle right now because it's related to what we just discussed. So are you saying that you can get it without showing strong innovation evidence? Which I think a question shows that maybe there is still a little bit of a misunderstanding about what is like strong innovation evidence. I think what I wanted to clarify here is that you should have strong innovation evidence. It's just that the idea of an innovation that people have is not exactly the requirement that technician has. So, for instance, when people think about innovation, they think about something that changed the world, right? And then if they think about their career, they think that, oh, I never changed the world with my work. I was just a software engineer building something. This is the way to think about it that will not lead you to picking this criteria, and maybe you won't even apply, right? So what we meant here is that you can analyze your experience and think whether there were things within it that can be convincingly presented as an innovation, something new. So innovation is something new, right? Something unique, something that hasn't been done before, or maybe on a larger enough scale, something that is new for your company or your industry. As Ivan said, like if you Google something, it's hard to find something like this, right? It's not obvious. It's something like an innovation in process or in technical solutions, or if your product is new, or if you work in an industry that is broadly an innovative industry. So for instance, like right now, people working with AI, obviously, like it's very easy to make a case that you're working on innovations in this space, or Web3 or things like that. So this is what you have to keep in mind. And also remember that this is all within the context of the time, right? So for instance, if you're talking about something that you worked on 5 years ago, or like 4 years ago, and right now it's common knowledge, like everybody has it, everybody has done it, you have to explain that this was an innovation back then, right? In your letters, in your documents, you can find screenshots from some publications that maybe explain it, that this is an innovation and things like that. So this is the way to think about innovation. Would you like to add something to it, Ivan, from your perspective about innovation for software engineers?
Yeah, sure. Regarding this question, the important thing to remember, they do not describe innovation like in the guide. What they're saying is literally, I'm reading the guide right now, a proven track record of innovation. This is the start of the sentence. So proven track record, it means that you have to show this kind of sequence, right? It's not enough to submit one document. Well, probably if it's one significant innovation, probably it's enough. I don't know, but I used it as a track record. I submitted 3 documents about innovation, proving that it's sequence, it's a track record. And also what they're saying about founder, senior executive, not about me. I am an employee. And then in the end of the sentence, they have as an employee working on a new digital field or concept. New field or concept. Well, if your company, working on a new product in a new market, new field, right? Why not? Or you are using new concept, new approach to solve particular problem, right? Correct? From this point of view. So again, saying innovation, we're thinking about something you're going to have a Nobel Prize for, like innovation, totally new approach of, I don't know, treating cancer. But if you are Nobel Prize, it's not the case of Global Town. Probably, I don't know, probably there are visas even better suited for this level of people, right? If we're like Tech Nation, Global Talent Program is for broad amount of people, broad variety of engineers, experts. Of course, you have to be kind of outstanding person, but still it's expected that there are many outstanding person, not like one person in the industry. If you're one person in industry this level, that it's, you can it doesn't make sense to write a guide for one person in industry. This one person will find a way to live in any country they want, right? But if it's variety of experts, then it should be something doable, like those your innovation, your things you didn't should be yet outstanding, but still possible, because talking about Nobel Prize, it's not that possible for for any kind of experts to achieve. It's one humankind person experience. Yeah, so that's my comment about this.
Yeah, I think it's really helpful. And I do hope that if you're watching this and you're still on the fence about applying or not applying, I think that I really want you to take time this weekend and really think about the innovation part if you don't have the external profile that a lot of people don't have. And think of whether you can apply the stuff that we just discussed to your own experience, whether you can pull something out of it that can be used to prove innovation. Because I really think that this criteria is underutilized by engineers who try to squeeze their experience and go to the second criteria, which is the outside contributions one. They would have some minor mentoring experience somewhere through some platform or at work or something like this, or maybe they would have some public speaking, but that's not really consistent across time, and they would try to go for the second criteria. And a lot of people get rejected for the second criteria just because it become it's much harder to meet it, unfortunately, with time. So if you don't feel like your career is very much centered around community, then like if your work, if you, so for instance, like if you think about your career in general and you're trying to choose the criteria, I think that you would agree that like the third criteria is something that pretty much a lot of engineers can meet, because this is like your technical contributions to the growth of a digital company, which is if you're doing something meaningful at work, you would have some examples of that, hopefully. If you don't, then I think you have a bigger problem than getting this visa. If like during the last 5 years you have not done anything that moved the needle at any company, then I think it's quite strange and a bit sad. But then you have to choose like the innovation or the second criteria, right? Like how do you choose it? And I think that you have to like ask yourself whether the work that you have done can be described as an innovation, or you were rather more focused on community work, giving back to society, kind of volunteering and doing all those things, or like more for like public persona image. So for instance, like in my case, when I was applying, for me it was clear that I'm going for the second criteria because I had a lot of social media presence, a lot of volunteering, a lot of community work, and this is something that I leveraged. I also like had my book, my blog, and all those things. But if you don't have that like strong presence, I think that innovation might be an easier thing to meet, which is a little bit counterintuitive for people because of the guide. I think it's so mysterious that people assume somehow the worst about it, that it's super hard to meet this criteria. But as you said, like it's a track record of innovation for talent, for promise, for people who are young, kind of early on in their career. It's one example of innovation, right? So if you're early on, it becomes much easier actually. So just think about it. You have to come up with like one innovative example in your career, which I think is much more doable than trying to start mentoring people urgently and doing it for 5 minutes and then applying, which just looks odd and it doesn't work right now, unfortunately. So cool. Yeah, I think we've covered that a little bit as well. There is a follow up from about the innovation. So if my innovation isn't successful, is it still worth including, for example, an AI product that just never got on with the market? I think that's an interesting question. I would say that it's hard to answer such questions, again, because this is in the context of your whole case and your whole application. So if you do want to discuss this in detail, you can get in touch with me and we can do it privately. But I think generally it depends on the other documents, right? If this is the only example that you have, then I'm not sure how confident I would feel about this case. If you are going for talent, especially like if your only track record of innovation is a product that was never, it depends like what is like never caught on in the market. There are too many questions here to like too little detail. So yeah, typical software engineer answer is it depends. But I think generally, if you can make a case that this was an important innovation, even if it never caught on, if you can make a convincing case for that, then it can be like one piece of your evidence. It's like it's not your whole application, right? It's something that you can use. Like ideally, my rule of thumb is that you should have like an example of innovation that is you're super proud of, and then one that is you're proud of, and then one that is maybe like on the border. Maybe you're not super confident about it. I think this is like a general idea of it. But yeah, I hope that we covered innovation in enough detail. But if there are follow-up questions that are more kind of general thinking about it, then we'd be happy to clarify. But moving on, we've covered innovation. Thank you
One
for
short
the question.
notice
Yeah,
innovation.
yeah.
Basically, they're not saying anything about success of innovation, right? They are not requiring success in any ways. It should be innovation, and it should be proved as a innovation. But that's it. For my cases, for example, I did not provide any proofs that those are successful innovations, at least for two of them, right? My personal innovations inside companies, they are not on the market even. I'm not selling them. They are working inside company. And company itself, right now it's a startup. We're growing, we're having some money, but it doesn't mean that in 5 years it will not shut down, right? It's innovative, but successful or not, who knows?
Yeah, yeah. I guess it depends kind of how this will pan out. I think that like its success, of course, is more impressive than failure. So if you can come up with examples of innovation that caught on, then it's great. Also, I think it helps if you can show impact of your innovation within the company. For instance, as we did with your innovations, we showed like how some metrics improved thanks to your work, which I think was really nice. Um, but this, yeah, I think you can leverage this criteria for your advantage just because it's so vague. They do mention some things about salary, about proof of product in the market. Maybe this was the question where this guide mentioned like proof of traction of the product in the market. This is something that startup founders often use. So, for instance, if you're working on an innovative product, they are showing that this product exists in the market and it's making some money. Of course, it makes it more impressive than if you just have an idea as a startup founder and you're just one person working on it. Nobody uses it in the world, then it can be something, but it would be a bit difficult to kind of build the whole case based on that. But yeah, so this was the two criteria that we discussed. I think in a lot of detail. Maybe that's the most detailed explanation of all the documents that I have seen on YouTube, which is great. So I hope this helps people to work on the documents on their own and gives them some ideas of how they can present their own experience. If you have follow-up questions, again, you can ask in chat or in comments. If this is more generic, if this is something specific to your application, get in touch with me on LinkedIn. I think it's the easiest way to just DM me. So there is one other criteria, the third one, right? The technical contributions. Maybe you can tell us a bit more about which documents you used there and how you chose the achievements to mention.
Yeah, so I provided 3 docs about basically 3 companies. One is I'm currently working on, product science. One is TopTal, where I previously worked, and the third one is Rike. So this criteria, in my understanding, is about showing that kind of in numbers that you did something, and this resulted in company having improvement in some metrics. So for product science, as a growing startup, it's kind of easy, but I mean, we have a short team. I am one, like at some point I was one of 2 front-end engineers, and we were having new rounds, we were having new clients, and obviously my work is like related directly to all things like that. We were preparing new features to show them on a DroidCon to get new clients, to get a new round, and I just described it. We had several significant, basically two significant milestones before several rounds and before several conferences, and I described, hey, I was developing and leading this feature. It's important. It's an important piece of user experience inside. Of course, I was working on the front-end sides of also backend developers, but still, it's a significant contribution. And then, hey, see the results. We got around, had screenshots from some news about our company getting new round of investments. Also, again, I mentioned this article on TechCrunch where our founders describing that we have revenue and stuff like this. So here is a case where that startup you work is directly related to what's going on with the company. So it's kind of easy. All things you do definitely have an effect. Then previously at TopTal, which is a big company, and there it's kind of hard to correlate your work and and changes inside company, but yet still kind of your contributions still relate, still reflect onto what's going on at company at some extent. You just have to show the connections, show the dots, like how what you did reflected onto what company get. And with TopTal, at some point we worked on to reworking, redesigning some important piece of the platform, and it was kind of publicly announced that, hey, TopTal reworked some things, and then after our release, during some time, TopTal got some kind of publication rewards that is best freelancing website according to some websites, and I kind of stitch all these things together. I described, hey, I led this feature development at TopTal. I did that, and this to improve development and to improve processes. And finally, see, TopTal was also progressing in their level of things. They're having new achievements, bigger revenue and stuff. So all things I could find about TopTal progressing at that years where I was working there, I added to the document, and also added a reference letter from an expert proving that yes, Ivan was working on this project. It was significant thing, thanks to him and stuff like this. Third document was about Reich, and there, luckily, at some point, I worked at some project which was very wide published, because it was time where Reich decided to go more on an enterprise market, meaning that we had to develop some particular features strongly required from huge enterprise clients, like 100,000 employees, this size companies. Those features were mostly about security, encryption, rights, and stuff like this. And I was leading front-end side of those changes. and we had publications in media that, hey, like successfully published this and this new feature updates required by enterprise clients. And so also I described it that I was working on those features. I was coordinating work between several companies of integrating these new things for client applications. And also provide the letter from my product manager, actually, who from a product side was leading those changes. And he also said, hey, yeah, those were important features. Event contribution was significant and important and stuff like this. So those were my 3 documents about significant contribution.
Mm-hmm. I think this was very insightful, and I think that what I think people sometimes miss is that if we're talking about you working as an employee of a company and having publications about your work, you normally wouldn't have publications that mention your name specifically, right? If you're an engineer, but you would still probably have some publications about some projects or product updates that got released that gathered some traction as you had, and you can actually use those publications and screenshots from those publications to strengthen your own application. So you take some of this achievement and some of this authority and you kind of use it to your own advantage, right? That you worked on this and you have to connect the dots. You have to connect yourself to this product, right? So you can't just get a screenshot of a product name or project in a newspaper and just paste it into your application. It doesn't work this way. You have to explain that you were instrumental to the success of this thing. And this is how successful applications are often built. Like you would have an expert saying that you did this project, and then you would have a screenshot from a publication about this project. And this way you connect yourself to this publication through an expert, which I think we've done really well in your application. And we're getting some nice feedback from Edith. Well done, Ivan. I agree. Great job. I was thinking we should look at some comments so that people who are waiting for them to get answered get them answered. So we had a question about how can we validate that technician validation isn't closed. This is a good question. It's kind of existential because technician doesn't exist anymore, but they're accepting applications, which in itself is kind of weird. But as I wrote on Twitter, it's like life has been weird for a couple of years at least. So I guess it's just one of those things that keep getting weirder. But how can we validate it? So I shared the link in the chat on gov.uk website. This is the official website. This is an official update from Home Office. I don't know how much more official we can get, but basically you can see the URL says the Slack says that they are technician in season operations, but if you go to this URL, you will actually see that they are season operations, but they're still assessing applications. So that's the official news. You can
Schrödinger technician, it's
exactly
exists and does not exist at the same time.
Yeah, there are many things in life that work in weird ways, and maybe we don't fully understand how they work, but we still use them. So this is one of those things. I think we won't get anything more official for now. I guess the question that worries people is how long this will last, and the truth is that we don't know. Nobody knows. I mean, somebody knows, but it's not publicly available information, and I don't work for a technician, so I don't have any insider information. And this is all that we know right now. So you can do whatever you want with this information. I ran a poll on LinkedIn asking people whether they want to wait or to apply now. I think it was like 50-50 split. Some people are waiting, some people are applying. But I guess it just depends on your own approach your life, like your own situation. Do you have time right now or not? So I can ask you, Ivan, like if you were in the situation, if you didn't apply yet, right? If you haven't applied and you are still thinking of it, what would you do right now? How would you think about it if you were in the situation of people who haven't applied yet, but maybe still want this visa? How would you think about it?
Well, so we have an official announcement from Gov.uk, right? So they're saying, applying guys, somebody somehow are going to access your application. That's what we should know. If you need this visa still, if you want to prepare and apply, do. Right now, probably it doesn't make sense anymore to hurry up, like specifically as we did to apply before the end of March, right? So probably right now, if your plan was to work on your application at some particular speed, stick to it, work on it as you planned. So probably next week we will know. Like if next week there are some endorsements, then they're definitely working somehow. Probably it's not that important for us how they're working. Well, somehow they're working. They are giving endorsements. That's what we need, right? If it's so do as usual. Stick to a plan and submit your application.
Yeah, very logical approach to the situation, and very calm. I think when we were strategizing with you when the news dropped, I think we were much more stressed at that point. But I think right now I would still try to keep up the pace and not really relax too much. Like I wouldn't plan right now to work on this for 6 months. I would still try to get it done very quickly, and just to make sure that I get in. Uh, but maybe yeah, it just depends on your risk tolerance and like how much time you have. Maybe we can talk about time actually and like time commitment, because this is something that people ask me all the time. People have some perception in terms of time it takes to do this, and I think you hinted a little bit about like how much time it took you. But I do explain this in my webinars. I explain it privately to clients, but I think it will really be helpful to applicants to hear this from somebody who went through this process now, and somebody who can just share their own kind of opinion, their experience in terms of time commitment to this, because I think a lot of people are a little bit mistaken about how time consuming this is, and also the perception that you can mm, kind of hire somebody who will do most of the stuff for you and you can just outsource it completely. Not completely, right? But like you can really limit your time involvement in this. um, and this will not impact the result, like the end state of the application. So, what is kind of your thinking about time involvement from the point of view of the client, of the candidate, and what should people prepare for psychologically if they want to work on this?
Well, the short answer, it depends, right? But it depends on what. It depends, first of all, is how obvious your case is. Like if you somehow sure that your evidences are obvious on their own. Let's say I don't know, very famous and popular person in industry, you have tons of publications, public speakings with a lot of views, then probably you can spend I don't know, small amount of time preparing your documents, because well, it's kind of obvious that you are a talent and recognized, but still, check on somebody. Well, of course, I would suggest to schedule a call with Nadia and try to, pitch yourself, describe your case to her. Well, obviously, if you are such a great talent that you can just validate that, okay, I will submit a couple of documents showing that I'm as good as I don't know, Chuck Norris, and then no problem, you'll spend 2 weeks and submit, and you're okay. But the vaguer your case is, the more time you have to spend polishing your documents, because like my example, again, I did a first try, just showing the same things we discussed. I showed I worked here, here, and here, which are product companies, very popular ones. Should be obvious if you know about them, if you have context. I provided my contracts with them, again showing money, which should be obvious if you know the market prices of salaries in the country I worked in. But all those things should be, it's actually really parts you have to describe. Because imagine that person who is checking your documents knows, well, not really nothing about industry, but that's well, if you can convince a random guy, a random person that you are global talent, then okay, you can spend few days and apply. But if it's not that obvious, you have to think carefully about strategy, think carefully about because actually 2 pages of a document to describe a particular point of your achievement is not that big. I mean, third pages most probably will be occupied by a cover letter from an expert, because it's on its own a very important piece of proof, right? But then also you have to describe the context in details, like why it's significant, and you have to be very precise, very clear about the statement, and it takes time. You have to, especially if we are talking about track record several years ago, you were doing something. It's not that easy to remember in details and describe in a clear way what exactly you was doing, why it was important, why it was significant contribution, why exactly it was innovation and stuff like this. Also, reference letters and cover letters and stuff like this, communicating with people, it depends. I had very great people, very great experts, where thanks God and thanks to them, they were answering quickly, they were helping me, and they were writing these letters. But it's not always the case, right? You have to think about experts. You have to communicate with them first. You have to wait their answers. Are they going to support you or not? And stuff like this. And also you have to take time while they provide you letters and stuff. It's well, it depends. Like first try, it took me 6 months to apply with almost zero documents and to fail. Then then we spent months for the second try, but it was a month with the context. I already Googled a lot about my previous companies. I had a bunch of links. I have a bunch of ideas what I'm going to provide as approval of success of the companies. I previously already had letters from experts as those main 3 letters. So I just needed to probably negotiate with some something that they provide new letters for the new tribe. But again, I had something already, and still yet it took, well, a lot of time. As I said, months of additional full-time job behind your main job. That's quite a lot, especially because I could not take a vacation that time, because I was leading another significant and still leading a significant project in our company, and I couldn't take just a vacation. Again, vacation for months, even in regular time, is not that acceptable. But when you are leading a significant project, it's just impossible. So I was taking some day offs, like 2 day offs per week. That's what I could get, but still, it was tough. So think about your case and your situation, and plan wisely. Most probably in a in a regular piece, it will take like months, weeks for you to prepare an average case, I think.
Yeah, I think in the past, in kind of normal times, it was 2.5 months of like normal preparation on top of having a full-time job. But just to note, but we're talking about doing this together with somebody who's working with you individually. If you are doing this completely on your own, it will likely take more time. Just in my experience, when I was applying for this visa last year, I was doing this on my own, And it took me a lot of time to figure out exactly what the criteria are, how to fulfill them, what they are. I think I really struggled with the criteria. When I was doing this, there was a lot less information online back then than there is now. And I've tried to correct this with my YouTube to have information about the criteria. But still, to this day, when I do strategy sessions, and this is my most popular service, this is where most people really struggle with the criteria and choosing them. So I think this is a thing where you can save a lot of time just talking to somebody who understands this better and just choosing the criteria and getting you started. But then once you work with somebody, I think it also helps to have somebody kind of to ask questions, to to have some sort of support. And honestly, like looking back on our experience working together, I thought that this was like a um, perfect mode of doing this and perfect mode of working on the case like this, that we were in kind of constant communication and we were both very much involved in this. So it wasn't just me kind of trying to push it forward and you just kind of being disengaged. You were very much engaged, and I think this was really what kind of was the key to success in this situation. Just you being very invested in it and being super focused on it. Because I do think that the cases where, as you said, the case is very obvious, then I think it's easy for somebody external, like a lawyer or a coach, to just find links online of you getting some awards or winning competitions and things like that, or your startup raising a lot of money and you have a profile on TechCrunch or something like this. Then I think in this case it can work really well and you can save yourself time. You just pay somebody and you save a lot of time. But I think for a lot of people, for like mortals like us, I think this approach doesn't, in my experience, it doesn't really look that great. Like the result of it, it feels a bit strange because like a person who is not you, they don't know your experience that deeply. Would you agree with that?
Sure. As I said, it's the matter of the story, and if in your story your achievement are not that obvious, it means that the story should be more precisely prepared. It should be, properly described and proven, and it's hard to work on it on your own because of two main things. One is to make it on schedule. I don't know about everybody, but for me, it would be hard to to work precisely and constantly for a long period of time, even if it's important for you. Still, sometimes you can you know can be busy and occupied with some stuff in your life, and you like missing some points, some milestones in your schedule, and it's making longer and longer and longer. If you have communication with a coach, with an expert, then it's like a trainer. If you are preparing for a marathon, let's say, if you are doing it on your own, then okay, so today I don't feel well. I'll not go on a training, on a run. Let's keep it today. But if you have a coach waiting for you on a street, then no excuse. You have to go and run, right? So first of all, coach is keeping you on your own plan, and also, again, going back to the story, somebody has to evaluate this story, has to read it from an outside. You probably love your small little story about yourself. You think it's great and it's so cute and it's good enough, but somebody, some kind of outside view can really evaluate it the same way as reviewers from technician or whatever endorsement body will be evaluating. They have no context. They have only those words you're providing, those links you're providing, and experts who seen many other stories, many other applications. They've seen results, they've seen responses from the technician. They can detach this sensitivity from the story and just formally check that it makes sense, it's describing, it's significant, it's really outstanding. Without it, it will be a long journey, like months of work in the dark. Like you're doing something, and you will have a feedback only in the end. Once you prepare this huge amount of documents, you're submitting it, and you're waiting for the feedback, and they're providing your feedback, which is hard way to work and hard way to receive a result. If you're working together with an expert, you are receiving this feedback on every step, on every stage, and you can even adjust your plan during the work. Because with Nadia, for example, on first calls, we had two calls, right? This review, when I had an initial plan, we adjusted initial plan based on I adjusted based on her feedback, right? Then we had a strategy call where we described how we are going to do particular documents, what is the idea of the story. After that, we again adjusted it because after discussion back and forth, we understood that okay, something can be something probably will work better this way. And then again, during this run, during the months, still we adjusted some things, like we finally decided that okay, we are not going to provide this document about salary because there are more significant documents which are staying mandatory criteria better. And also we adjusted okay, this letter, we are not receiving this letter from this person, then okay, then we will do it in a different way. We will do this document without a letter and stuff like this. Like during the process, also you need to be agile. You have to be ready for changes, and again, deciding on your own, is this change okay or not okay? Is it is it improving your application or decreasing your chances? It's hard to understand on your own. And again, if you are communicating with with some random people, there are channels and forums when you can send your application and they give you feedback. It's better than nothing. Still, it's a different person assessing your application, but they are not in context. They don't know the story, the previous ideas. They don't know, the things like they are not going to spend hours and days thinking about your application. That's definitely extensive work which should be paid for, right? So that's why I personally prefer to work with people whom I'm paying for this work, because it's really important work, very hard work, and you have to you want to get as much value as you could, and if you want high value, you have to pay for that. That's my way.
Yeah, thanks for sharing. I now have come to realize like just how important this is, because I think initially when I was applying, I was, again, as a lot of people, trying to save money, and I was also interested in doing my own research and spending time on the forums and chats. Like for me personally, it was just fascinating. Like I enjoy this stuff, and this is why I do visa coaching, because for me, I find this interest in the process of immigration. I have gone through immigration processes in a number of countries around the world, and I've done this experience kind of on my own, and like preparing applications for permanent residency or for citizenship. For me, it's my idea of fun, and I know that a lot of people really hate this stuff. So like I did it for two reasons: save money, but also because I was interested to learn more, and this allowed me later to advise people and do content on this stuff. And dig deeper. But also, realistically, a lot of people don't really want to go as deep as necessary for this visa to do this successfully. So I think it's important to be aware of what your needs are, what your situation is. But and I think it's very important to be like self-aware, as Ivan said. Like, do you need a coach? Do you need support? Like, what kind of person are you? And just answer this question on your own. Like, you don't have to do it like somebody else. Like, if somebody had a coach and they were happy, like, you don't have to have a coach if you can do it on your own. But on the other hand, if you know that you have this tendency of procrastinating, of not really enjoying this kind of stuff, maybe you don't enjoy writing letters and you have to write a lot of stuff in this application. You have to do a lot of writing. This is what we learned during this process. So yeah, again, this is what I keep saying. Self-awareness is really important. And just understanding like how much time you have, how much money you have, and realistically whether you would be able to do this on your own or not. Just answering this question, I think, is a good start. But on the YouTube, I will just share this link again. If you're watching this somewhere else, just make sure to subscribe, to like this video. It will help others discover it. And I do spend a lot of time creating free information. You will probably see that here on this channel. You get like so much information for free that I'm not sure you can find anywhere else. I mean, I'm sure that a lot of stuff that we're talking about is unique. It doesn't exist anywhere else on the internet. So it's important, if you find this helpful, just spread the word, hit the like, and all the rest that YouTubers say. It's kind of, we're tired of hearing this, but it's actually true. It actually helps. So I will appreciate your support, and let us know in the comments if you're watching this what you found helpful about this live stream. And if you have more questions, maybe we can get through them as well. It's a long stream. It's 2 hours 15 minutes already, but I find that it's a very nice, like, deep discussion that we're having, because we both worked on your documents and we kind of remember all the details. And I'm sure this will be helpful for others in the future as well. Maybe we can look at some of the comments that came in, and do keep them coming if you're watching this live. Or if you don't have any comments, it's really helpful if you just say, something in the chat that you're enjoying it, or, just say hi. It does help others to discover this live stream. So there was a message from Edith, who subscribed to the channel, which is great. This is something that you should all do. What else was there? Okay, about the fees. So a question from Maxim. As far as I know, the fee is £623 for each, and the medical assessment costs around £624 for each. Are there any hidden fees or payments in the application process? So I will direct this to you, Ivan, because you just recently went through this. So if you still remember all the exact numbers, you can maybe tell us like about the costs. Was there anything hidden that you just recently went through, because you just applied for the stage 2, right?
Yeah, that's a huge amount of money, actually, because I don't know, probably what mentioned in this message about health insurance, it's 1 year 600. If you're applying for 5 years visa, then you have to pay for 5 years of medical assessment, which is going to be $3,000-4,000 for each person, guys. It's a lot of money. And yeah, just a lot. It's draining your savings when you're
I know.
applying on stage 2.
The trauma of paying the health surcharge. This it's called immigration health surcharge. Basically, it's you paying in advance for your health insurance once you come here. So we supposedly have this free health system, which is very expensive. And you pay in advance for it. So once you come here, if you don't work for a while, right? The idea is that you should be able to go to a hospital and get, again, free healthcare, which is kind of the idea. And yeah, as you said, like, you pay in advance for all the years that you get the visa for. So I think people maybe sometimes are not really aware of how much money this ends up being. So just, create a budget and like have an idea of like how much money you will need to spend on this visa in total, and not be surprised by the cost. But yeah. Was
Yes,
there anything else? Yeah.
that's a lot. Well, the most significant part, this is those insurance, of course, for me and my wife, and also visa costs is kind of correct. I don't remember exact numbers, but this is around 600-700 pounds per each. Again, this is stage 2. Stage 1 was also something like 600 pounds for stage 1, and those are visa applications. They had this checklist of documents, and people looks like, based on the chat, people get confused by the list of documents there, because it looks like this checklist is basic for all types of visa, as I understand, and there is a one point of proving sufficient funds to prove that for your travel in the United Kingdom you have enough money, like usually for touristic visa. And we were joking with my wife that it's not the case for global talent visa, because paying so much money in advance, you kind of prove that you have them. Without it, you will not be able to submit for these documents, and you will not be able to even prepare for this visa, because rather you're paying for lawyers or for experts who are helping you with your application, it's also a significant amount of money. Why? Because it's a tough job. It's very, specific skills and expertise you cannot easily find right now around internet, even though it's in high demand. So it's expensive. Be prepared for that. But it's just the beginning, I guess, because life in the United Kingdom is also expensive. Like renting expensive, everything is expensive. So if you are preparing yourself to live in this country, be ready to pay.
Indeed, I agree. I do encourage everybody to check all those numbers, online on official sources, whether things change or not. But this is generally the kind of money that you should keep in mind. It will vary a little bit depending on where you're applying from. And I normally never advise on stage 2 since I'm not an immigration solicitor, but generally it will depend like what your current situation is. So for instance, I was switching the visa from skilled worker to the global talent based in the UK. So my situation was very different from Ivan's. So for me, like I had to do the biometric appointment, and back then in London you could only get, like, there were no free appointments, so you had to pay for the appointment additionally, and it was like, I don't remember, it was like £200 per person or £150 per person. But you're paying this after you already paid all the thousands of pounds for the health insurance. And you're in this frame of mind where it's like, £300, like whatever, I've already paid so much. But although it is a lot of money still, but I think that you need to mentally prepare. You need to set aside this money in advance. And the general immigration to the UK is not cheap. Like, it's not a cheap country, and the immigration system is not cheap. And I think this is important to realize, like, why the prices for coaching or for immigration help is such, because also we have very high taxes. So and the cost of living is very high. So just be aware of this. And when you see somebody charging something, just put it in the context of like life here in London, especially if somebody is based in London. It's, one of the most expensive cities in the world. So I think you need to raise your kind of budget bar a little bit higher if you want to be realistic. There are countries where it's much cheaper to move to, right? If, for instance, Europe, like you don't pay 5,000 pounds or dollars in health insurance. Like, it doesn't happen. It's things, specific to the UK. That's how this country works. So just be prepared for it, put money aside. But also, I think that what sometimes people don't really understand or appreciate, especially people who are already based in the UK. So if you're based in the UK, you have another visa and you want to make the switch, but you don't want to kind of spend this money because it still feels like a lot. The thing is that the visa opens up a lot of opportunities for you in terms of making money in the UK. So you have the freedom to work anywhere you want. So you can have your job, but also you can do consulting on the web, on the side. You can have your own business. You can have, I don't know, some public speaking gigs that are paid. And there are a lot of opportunities in London, in the UK, to hustle this way and kind of make more money. So realistically, a lot of people actually after switching to this visa, they can easily switch their jobs. They can make more money this way. They can ask for a promotion without being scared that they will be, rejected and kind of thrown out of the country. So it gives you a lot of freedom, right? So in a way, it's kind of an investment in your future. And this is what a lot of people tell me, that after they switched to the visa, their career just exploded. They got a promotion, they changed their job and got 15% more money. And then once you're in London, it's realistic to change a job and get much more money a year, like 20, I don't know, £20,000 in a pay raise. It's something that is realistic, or 10,000. So just think about the money in context of the UK and how much you can make in London if you work in tech, especially in kind of average sized companies or bigger companies or just startups that pay well. So I think this is important context to keep in mind, that money is kind of it's just in the context of the environment that you live in. But hopefully this helps, and let us know if you have more questions. Okay, there was, just thanks. Thank you for the questions. How do we choose between global talent and promise? So basically it's all about like how much experience you have in the field. So generally, if it's less than 5 years of experience, then people choose promise. If it's more, then they choose talent. But again, it depends. It's not such an easy question to answer. I shared a link to some of my webinars in the chat, and you can find them on my YouTube, where I explain this in more detail. But basically, promise is for somebody who's earlier on in their career, who are showing the potential to become a talent, and then talent is for somebody who's already a talent, and that's the broad description. People who are early on in their career sometimes get endorsed for talent if their achievements are very impressive. So it's a bit more complex than that. So I think this needs to be discussed individually with kind of client, and this is decided on a case-by-case basis. But generally, if you're like 8 years, I think in your case, Ivan, you have how many years? Like 8 or 10 years of experience, right? So we just applied for talent.
2010 already, yeah.
Yeah, so like this case is clear. You have to apply for talent. You can't apply for promise if you just have not enough achievements. You can't apply.
I think you can try to apply for promise, but kind of with some idea. Like I'm changing the
Yeah.
of proficiency. Let's say you're switching from front end into artificial intelligence, let's say, and you are starting to do some promising things there. Then it can work. But if you obviously have been working in this field for 10 years in this title, so it's hard to describe that you are still promising.
Yeah. It has to be believable, and you have to believe it in yourself, I guess, first. So sometimes people try to kind of twist it a little bit, but just be reasonable in what you're trying to assume. Like if there is a clear shift in your career, if you switched careers, then it doesn't matter if you're older. You can apply for promise, but you have to explain what happened in the past. So in your personal statement, maybe you can explain that, I was doing something and now I switched into this new field, and there is like clear distinction that this is something completely new. Then I think you can try. But the ultimate decision is up to Tech Nation. This is something that you can't really appeal. There is no process for appealing this. They evaluate the whole case and they make the decision whether it's promise or talent. So there are some weird cases where they make decisions that don't really make sense, but to us at least, but you can't appeal it. So it's a little bit more in their kind of field. But the general idea is that no matter which route you choose, you always put your best foot forward. You always have the strongest evidences that you can, the strongest letters that you can have. Maybe you can mention this about letters. So for instance, for you, Ivan, like the kind of letters and in general the documents, do you think like what is maybe you can share just some insights into what those documents should include in terms of like language and just general, like we don't need to go like in specifics of the letters or anything like that, but just like general approach to those documents, because this is something that people really struggle with, and I see this every day. People have documents that are very modest and shy, and this is cultural for a lot of people, especially like we're both from Eastern Europe, so it's common for us to be like very diminishing about our work. So do you have any thoughts on that? Maybe something that, as we kind of start to wrap up slowly, any tips for people who struggle with this and how they should approach their experience, presenting it, talking about it, just anything that comes to mind on this topic broadly, or just generally, like your tips on preparing a winning application?
Yeah, as you mentioned, this is a general idea for, kind of mentality of Eastern Europe that we, well, it's kind of not good in our cultures to advertise yourself. Like you should be kind of the less you talk about yourself, the better. Like you should always saying, I know I'm nothing. I'm just regular, usual developer and stuff like this. So and starting to work on a global market, you anyway have to fix it, how to break through it, because in companies from the United States, especially like startups and business, and probably Western Europe as well. It's a different. It works differently. You like basically amazing in the United States mean normal, like amazing means you did something average, which is kind of intuitive for us. And this is just one example of things. It's expected, even if in their education system, as I understand, they spend a lot of time doing presentations, during some talks and public talks, providing description of their work. They learn a lot about this, and as a result, on their market and in their culture, it's okay when you're describing yourself using the best possible words, using like shining diamond. That's your profile. You should be like rock star based on your CV, even though you are just average developer. That's what you those are the problems you will face if you're trying to look for a job in Western companies, right? And those are the problems you meet if you are hiring people, you are checking CV. It's like a first page of a magazine, but then you are starting to interview a person, and you realize that it was too much in the CV. But you have to follow those rules. You have to play in the same based on the same rules, because otherwise it's not going to work. Like they are from that culture, from that mentality, and you have to adapt to them. You have to learn somehow with, I don't know, books, with coaches, with trainers, with books. Anything is suitable for you. If you already have experience working in international companies, probably you already knew it. You already know how to do it, but probably you need some review to make sure that you used the best possible way. If you have never experienced it, if you have never worked in international companies, which is not a blocker for this visa, but you will learn many new things which will be useful for you when you start to look for a job in the United Kingdom. So yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I see this every day with my clients. People from Eastern Europe, people from Asian culture struggle with this a lot. And I talk a lot about this book, Culture Map, that I recommend to everybody to read it. It's really, really good. It just transformed my thinking about it when I moved to the UK and when I first started working on a day-to-day basis with people from different cultures. This is what I saw. And at first I really struggled with understanding, like, why am I having challenges kind of why was it more difficult to communicate in teams where people were from different cultures? And then when I decided that I need to understand like how people communicate in different cultures, and this is I think what is helping me again with the coaching, is where I see why the person is saying this stuff in their documents, and I'm trying to always guide people to be more assertive. And I understand how difficult it is for a lot of people, and very often people think that they have already done it, right? So I tell them like, do this very strongly, and they're like, okay, but I have already done it. And I'm saying, no, it's still not strong enough, it still doesn't feel strong. So I use just my experience but also my intuition a lot, and just thinking like, does this feel like a strong letter, or does this feel like a strong document or a strong CV or personal statement? They're very important, like in how you present it. And I think we can all learn a lot about it this from Americans. Honestly, I haven't had a lot of American clients, but the ones that I have, I've just been amazed at how good people in certain cultures are about selling themselves, and they're selling their stories. And there is something to learn there for me, even although I have a lot of experience in this. But this is something that is natural to people in some cultures, as you said, exactly like the show and tell culture from American schools, is that like you need to present something, that you made at home in front of your classroom, which is something that we don't do in schools in Eastern Europe. And a lot of people are like scared of promoting themselves. I think a lot of cultures are like this. It's even more so for a lot of women in certain cultures, where like women are told that you should not advertise yourself, you should not be like that, you should not be loud, or you should not be whatever. But in this application, you have to sell yourself, even if it doesn't feel comfortable for you. Because as you said, like you are on the playing field with people who know how to do this, right? They're either doing it themselves, or they're paying somebody to do this for them or help them, and you're competing with them, right? So if you're not presenting your case in the strongest shape possible, you are only hurting yourself. And I do think that the discomfort of doing this is worth the result at the end. Because one thing that I just remembered is that I had a client recently who went through the strategy and the review process, and then they also started applying for jobs kind of in the meantime as well, just like testing the market. And they saw that it became much easier for them to do the interviews, to talk about their experience, because as a technical candidate, they weren't quite used to thinking about this way. And during this coaching, I force everybody to really re-examine everything that they have done, and put like a money value on the things that they have done, which we have done with you, Ivan, as well. And they said that it became much easier for them to go through interviews, because they were like, I know all the projects that I've done. I know all the metrics, and it's also an amazing, I think, benefit of doing this, because if you want to change your jobs, you can easily do that. Well, maybe not easily in this market, but at least it's easier than it would have been, or at least you can um, go up for a promotion period or a review cycle, right? And you can present a stronger case to your boss. Maybe they will nominate you for a promotion this way. So this was, I think, a benefit that people maybe don't really think about. Was there in your kind of visa journey, was there something like this? Like, what was your biggest insight or learning throughout this? If something comes to mind, now that you're wrapping up your process, you're, waiting for a visa, kind of preparing to move to the UK. So if you reflect on this period, like what was your biggest kind of learning insight? Um, yeah, anything that you found valuable or new?
Well, if we're talking about this visa itself, then the probably biggest insight and kind of biggest misunderstanding I used to have was that I used to think about this global talent visa as O1 visa in the United States. They are very different, based on the not only like outcomes you have from this visa different, but the way of applying and the way of expectations for those visa are different. But somehow my basic understanding was that they're similar. You have to explain your public existence in some ways. to apply for this visa, but it turned out to be a whole different thing, and it's much more flexible in a way. You have a guide regarding technician visa. You, at least we used to have a form. I don't know will it work or not. You have um, ambassadors, which is also like impossible regarding O1 visa. So far I don't have any. I don't know about any guides, official guides from the United States, describing this type of visa or ambassadors describing how to apply of O1. You cannot even think about applying for O1 without lawyers. But I used to think about talent visa the same way, and it was a mistake. So this is a different visa, and this is more how to call it, human humanish way of applying. So it's expected actually that you are applying on it on yourself as a regular individual humankind. So you should not self-written your documents in a lawyerish way. You should not write, this as a law statements. You have to describe it with your own words, but still understandable, readable story, which makes sense about why you are the talent, and everything else is related to it. Then, if your story is obvious, it's one thing. If your story is not so obvious and you spend more time polishing the facts, but this is a story. Like, it's like, imagine you are applying for a job, but you're not going to have any interviews or something. You just have one shot. You have to send in email some documents in a particular way, explaining why they have to hire you. It's like starting from a cover letter, which is going to be a personal statement in the visa application as well. And then those documents are also describing the story of your background. It's like long, very detailed CV, kinda, but also writing. You should have some professional details there, like person who is going to read it will be. It's not going to be a software engineer, but they can understand some things, right? It's not going to be a lawyer or person from governments. It's not going to be embassy or stuff, right? It will be some people who are aware of industry, and you can imagine that you're applying for a job, but with one long document describing why you have to be hired. That's it, and you have to go with it. It's probably not that obvious. At least it was not a straightforward thing for me when I started this journey.
Yeah, I think a lot of people misunderstand this, and that's why they feel that their documents and their evidences, they have to be super official and formal. But honestly, the letters or the documents that are very, very formal and vague, they don't work. So, for instance, if you just have your documents written in a very formal way, using like empty words, that like corporate words, that don't really mean anything, it might seem to you that you have told your story, but like, just be realistic. Take a step back from your documents, read the document. It helps people to read the document to yourself out loud. Does this make sense, what you wrote? Does it Will somebody understand what you wrote? Like this mom test, right? Would your mom understand what you wrote here? And I think it's very hard to find this balance between being too informal and then too formal. It's quite difficult. It's quite difficult to explain it. I've been trying to make like formalize it into like more distinct like guidance, and I'm working on this, and I'm trying to do this like really having like clear criteria. But a lot of it right now feels like whether it feels convincing enough or not. And when I'm reviewing someone's documents, I always try to, my approach is just being super honest about everything that I read. If something doesn't make sense for me, I will just say, this makes no sense. Um, and then the chances are, if something doesn't make sense to me as a software engineer, then it won't make sense to somebody who's not a software engineer, right? But also here, I wanted to mention, this is something that people ask me all the time. Like, if you're a software engineer, then you probably can coach only software engineers. It's not true. Like, I've coached people from a variety of professions. It's just that once you kind of crack the code of this application, you can help pretty much anybody. But yeah, telling the story. I actually with time, I started to quite like it when the letters and documents are a little bit more personalized. And I think your documents did it very well. So just making sure that in some places where it's relevant, you tell something that is a bit more personal, or a letter can mention something that is like a story that connects you, the experts, to you, or something like this. The stories, I think, work really well, and like in general in writing, but in your documents as well. So just focus on telling the story of a particular project and an achievement, and this will immediately make your case better than probably most that would apply. Because I think people often fall down this trap of thinking this is a visa application, it has to be super formal, I have to write it as a lawyer or something like this. It's not really that. As you said, like, this is a permissionless visa. You can apply on your own. It's not that expensive to apply. I realize that still, like, the visa application, the initial one, can be quite expensive for certain locations in the world. But realistically, if you're moving here, you should have money set aside, or you should have a plan how you will make this money. But you can apply on your own. It's open. You don't need to have a lawyer or anybody else to help you. So I think this is a big advantage of this visa. And of course, I'm curious to see like what the rules will be in the future once the endorsement body changes. But for now, the rules are what they are. And I think they are very consistent with how the UK works in general. So it's a very much trust-based society, where a lot of things, they work on trust in society, in how the society works here. Like, I don't know, a lot of things about the tax system here, they're also kind of based on trust. So the way you build your application, I think, should be in this kind of vein, because people who are reviewing your application, they are living in this British context where it's up to you to tell a story, to make it convincing, and by default, you will be trusted with what you say. And yeah, it's just about making it convincing and making it readable. To just think of it like another person, like a human being like you, will be reading this. It won't be like a robot or like a lawyer or an embassy worker. It will be a human. And think of them, like, what would they feel reading your application? I think with your application one, like, your application ended up being like really well structured, interesting to read, uh, well, formulated, but also not too formal, so that you could read it and learn something new. I think in general, like, if you learn something new from an application, it's a win. So like, probably you are an expert in something and you can tell an exciting story about it, and you should do this in your application. That's your place. I think it can be like quite a creative process if you treat it this way. um, yeah, I think that's kind of all that came to mind. Let's finish looking at the questions. So it has been a very insightful session. Thank you. Thank you for the comment. If you enjoyed the session, let us know in the comments below as well. There was Edith saying, well done. I agree. Great application. Thank you guys for the great work and the live stream. Great advice from you. A lot of great advice here, and just people clapping, which is nice. Okay, I don't know if you have any more questions. I think I covered everything that I wanted to ask you about. Maybe kind of closing thoughts. We've discussed all the evidence pieces, right? We haven't talked about the personal statement, which I think is very important, and people tend to ignore it a little bit because they think that it's just something that can be done super quickly. What are your thoughts about the personal statement, and um, how do you think should people should think about the writing a strong personal statement?
Yeah, it's good you mentioned it because yes, it's underestimated and which, but at the same time, it's very important, and I tell you why. First of all, one small technical things which is make it different. Those are based on the application itself and based on the insights from chat. Uh, First of all, when you are creating your submission, the result of the submission will be one long PDF document. And this document will include all the answers to questions in the form and all the documents itself as well inside this one long PDF. And it will include your CV and statement as well. And the statement will be the first one. This is the first impression of your case. Reviewer will start assessing your application from your statement. And if you are aware about psychology and cognitive illusions and stuff like this, you know how important is the first impression. When you starting communicating, looking for a job, you are sending a cover letter, you having a first call, first meeting, this is crucial. When you're starting your job, your first days, first weeks are crucial. You are making first impression, and then everything else are working connected with the first impression. So it means that in this first words in your this personal statement, you have to very precise, very clearly, and at some extent in a detailed way tell this person why you think you are a global talent, what makes you such a person. It's very important, again, those are first words, and then this person will review your documents keeping in mind this first impression. So you are telling, I think I'm recognized talent because I did this, and that, and I also did that because I don't know, love this work. I am also very curious about those things. I'm particularly curious about that and stuff like this. And then those documents, they are proving, supporting your statements. They are explaining in more details ideas you put in the statement. But this statement, it's like you are deciding whether you have to buy this book or not, and you see this cover page and some first notes about this book, like what is going to be told there in this book, why this book is useful for you, what thoughts inside this. Same here, you are starting from that. This is main advertising of your assessment. And another thing, kind of insight from chats from ambassadors of Technation, it's actually they spend not that much time of your on your assessment. As we like, nobody can prove it 100%, but they obviously have some specific time restriction for every case. They have some time amount they spend on every application, and this time is actually not that big. It's as I understand, I can be mistaken, but still it's something around half an hour or maybe less. It means that you've probably spent months preparing it. Like you wrote carefully a lot of things, but then they have to quickly, like on a high level, understand whether you are you're sufficient for this application or not. If somehow starting this, imagine you are reviewing a CV from a candidate, you are hiring person. It's going to be pretty similar. You have a restricted time. You just checking quickly CV and cover letter, and if suddenly you got intuitive impression that no, something is wrong about this person, I don't like it, then you are going to checking documents with this cognitive illusion to find ways why this person is not suitable. Same about interview. When your first impression of a person is negative, then you most probably will have to this cognitive illusion to find why, to prove why this person is not suitable for this job. Other way around, if you prepare very well, very great statement, and this statement somehow told this person, yes, this person is exactly what we need. This person is talent, is well recognized expert. Then this person will start to search and to scan your documents, searching for approvals, searching for points why I'm right, why this person is suitable. Those are two very important different cognitive ways reviewer will go based on this first impression, which is given in your statement and CV. So that's why it's important.
Oh, wow. I agree. I think you shared a lot of things that I usually share with my clients, and I try to always stress the importance of the personal statement. This is something that I usually advise people to write last. There are different kind of schools of thought on that. Some people start with it. I like to end on it, and you can try like what works for you, obviously. But I think if you end with it, you at this point you already know all the other evidences that you have. You have completed all the other documents, you have the letter signed, you have your CV, all of it is ready. And then the last part of the puzzle is just presenting it in a good way. And I think it really helps once you have everything ready. But it doesn't mean that doing this last doesn't mean that it's less important. It's ultimately one of the most important documents ever. All the things that you said, 100% true. When I'm reviewing somebody's case, if this is like a whole application review, I also start with a personal statement. And if I don't understand like what's happening in the personal statement, then it's very hard. Like I will be biased against this case a little bit because I'm already a bit annoyed that I don't understand what's happening there. I'm a bit annoyed that I don't it is annoying for people to not understand stuff. And I think you have to understand this and keep this in mind that you're writing this for a human and your idea is for them to have a really good experience while they do this, while they read your application. And you have to imagine that they are tired, they don't have that much time to review it. Right now, we don't know what's happening. Like the organization is no longer existing, but they're reviewing your application somehow. So like we don't know what's happening. But just make sure that you're making it as easy and interesting and fun for them to do it. I think it helps if you set the stage for the criteria that you have chosen in your personal statement. So, for instance, if you're choosing innovation, then your personal statement should mention something about you being an innovator and you have done a lot of innovations in your career. If you're choosing the second criteria or the contributions one, then it would be normal and like it would make sense for your personal statement to mention that in my career, I have not only done a lot of technical achievements and things, in the companies, but I've also paid a lot of attention to the community. That it's vital for me to share information for free. That I do open source. That I have spoken at large conferences attended by 1,000 people. So things like that, they should be there as well, because the idea is that they should read this personal statement and they should understand what they're going to read next, right? And this is easier for them than to believe that you're actually an innovator if you set the stage before, or that you're really passionate about open source if you mention it in your personal statement. And then the next document that they read is your CV, right? Maybe we can mention a few words on your CV, like how you approached it. I know it's like we're amazingly enough, we're almost at 3 hours, which is, I think, the longest live stream that I've had. So if you're watching this live, let us know whether you watched from the beginning, that would be, I think, impressive if somebody's watching this for 3 hours, or you joined at some point, and what you think. I don't know, Ivan, how tired you are at this point.
I'm okay, but probably it's good
Yeah,
to wrap up.
yeah.
But
We have just one. We have
this,
just one document to discuss. Yeah.
yeah. This topic, is not only interesting for me based because of I was doing this application, but it's very related to, looking for job and hiring stuff, and which is actually kind of interesting topic for me in proficiency. So that's why I can talk about it, infinite amounts of time, like how to prepare for interviews, how to prepare your CVs and statements, how people are doing interviews and checking information and stuff. So yeah, regarding CV, when we had the first call with you, first thing we noticed that I submitted on my first try. I submitted kind of regular technical CV. Like it's basically kind of your LinkedIn profile. Still, as I researched some things on preparing CV and recruiting before, I had my CV in a way where I'm describing my achievements, my duties, which is actually important for your CV, usually when you're applying for a company. But in this particular case, applying for this visa, your CV should be even a bit more specific for this particular application, as usually it's advised for you if you're applying for a company and this company matters for you, then you have to prepare a CV for a company. You have to kind of reflect in your CV information from requirements of this company, as somebody who's going to review your CV should understand why they have to hire you, and it should be obvious from your CV based on objective things. You have some accomplishments, you have some achievements, you've done some things which are related to this position. Same thing here. They have requirements that you have to be recognized as a talent, right? You have to done some things which you are submitting into this optional criteria. Depending on which criteria you've chosen, you have to connect those things into your CV as well. Working at this company, you have done those achievements. Those achievements are in your documents. Those achievements are mentioned in letters of your experts. Those achievements are, also mentioned in your statement. Those achievements are, it all have to be one connected story. So this, if we're talking about personal statement as a cover page of your book, and some description of a book, then this CV is kind of how you call page of a contact, describing important milestones in your story, and how those milestones are connected with your evidences and with your proof. So you worked at this company. If you've chosen innovation, then describe which innovations are connected to this company. If you chosen beyond primary occupation, your CV describe how your beyond occupation publications and public existence connected to this work. So this should be a piece of the story again. This is important. Things like I've been using, I don't know, Angular, React, and stuff. You can mention it, but it's not that important. So you have to once again, in CV, state why you think you are recognized talent.
Mm-hmm.
That's the main
Yeah.
thing.
This is really really cool, and yeah, just 3 hours of wisdom from Ivan. Really cool. I think that your experience with hiring really helped you in this case. This is just what I realized right now. The way you think about documents is really really spot on. Remember about your CV. Just don't send them this generic thing where you say I'm a qualified professional and I've used Angular for 3 years. It's like they don't care. And they will, you like, if the application is weak, they will reject and they will say we are not looking for developers who can use React, right? Looking for something more, and the CV should be something more. Don't use your generic one. Like, create something specific for the application. And on my channel you can find, I had a specific I had a webinar on the top mistakes that you can make and things that will get you rejected. And this was like top 5 mistakes, and then I had like 10 or 15. But this is tongue in cheek, obviously. But there are things that will likely get you rejected, and the idea is to make sure that you avoid those things, and then the chances of you getting the visa are much higher as a result of that. Cool. That was amazing. I think we've answered all questions. I think just one. Oh no, not my smiley face. Okay, this one. So the where the insurance is paid. So the insurance is paid once you get the endorsement. So after stage 1, when you apply for the visa, stage 2, this is where you pay the insurance and the visa fee, and yeah, it's kind of second stage. So the first commitment is just the £456. If you get rejected, you lose this money, but that's it. So you don't lose anything else. Yeah, hope this answers it.
Yeah, regarding
Cool. Yeah.
insurance, one small note that technically you can apply not necessarily for 5 years. You can apply, you can choose any amount, 1, 2,
Yeah.
3, 4 years. And I'm not sure, probably you have to choose it even on the first stage 1. You're choosing how many years you're applying for. So if you have to save money, you can apply for 1, 2, 3 years visa. Then you will have to pay less insurance on the stage 2, but you will have to extend your visa like after this period of time. You will be able to extend it after a year, 2, 3, but you will have to work on it. You will have to apply again and stuff.
You won't have to get like a new endorsement. Your old endorsement, unless it's been revoked for some reason. And I don't know what you have to do to get it revoked. But if that doesn't happen, you can just apply to extend your visa. You will need to prove that you have made some money in the UK in your field of endorsement. So it's important that you already have had time to relocate here, to find a job, or to make some money this way. So I think generally, again, if you need help for stage 2, seek independent counsel from a lawyer who will be able to advise you on the specifics of your passport, your path to, permanent residency, citizenship, like all those things. So this will need like independent counsel. But generally, I think that 1 year is a little bit too short in terms of having the time to relocate, to find a job, to settle, and then the year, it runs very very quickly, especially once you move. Time kind of shifts a little bit. So make sure that you have enough time to do all of this, and a year is very short actually, because then the visa runs out. You have to apply for the new one, and then you need to make sure that you're not overstaying and all of that. So just be aware of that. But that's it. There's a comment from Edith that you may be tired. Thank you so much, Nadia and Ivan. Yeah, thank you so much for watching until the end. Again, if you enjoyed this, make sure to subscribe, to like, leave a comment. Let Ivan know what you learned from this. Make sure to pass on the feedback to him. My guests are always very happy when they receive comments and thanks. This really means a lot, because you can imagine Ivan took 3 hours out of his Saturday after an exhausting process of getting the visa to share this information with you. So I'm sure that he'll appreciate feedback on what you learned. I know that an interview like this would have saved me a lot of time when I was preparing, just because of the level of just the quality of information that I think we now discussed. It was super detailed. It took 3 hours, but I think it shows just how much there is to this visa, right? Just talking about it took so long. And I think this is kind of just a testament to how complicated it is. Yeah, so to wrap up, thank you so much, Van, for sharing all of this, for taking the time, for explaining everything so patiently to us, to answering the questions. Thank you very much. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks everyone for watching, and thanks Nadia a lot for helping me with this visa. That's it.
Yeah, thank you so much for again trusting me. I always thank all my clients for placing their trust in me, and it was a pleasure to work with you on getting your endorsement. Thank you everybody for watching this, and I hope you have a lovely rest of your weekend. Bye everyone.